and I'd like to introduce Carole Hodges, a dear friend, and Carole is going to share her story. She's a financial professional specializing in helping women 50 plus, which is very tender to my heart. And in doing that, she has created a blog called menopausemillionaire.com. So without further ado, Carole, why don't you tell us a little bit about that event in your life that made you what you are today?
It's so interesting. Thank you, Liz, for allowing me to be here. And it's so interesting to hear you describe it that way, because it was a period of my life I didn't talk to people about for a very long time.
Why was that?
Well, in that single year where I divorced my husband and had a complete bankruptcy and lost my daughter to suicide, I was also struggling just to get going. And I was out interviewing for jobs. The last thing I needed them to know is what was really going on in my life.
That's incredible, to be able to act like all of these things were not going on.
I had a 30-year marriage before it ended. What had happened over time, some things maybe happen to all couples that you grow apart, but we were in business together. And that provided some extra strains, particularly when we didn't agree upon approaches. And we began to drift apart and not talk about things. In the midst of that, the company was not doing well. And in the midst of that, our oldest daughter came home from school. She had graduated summa cum laude from NYU. And all she wanted was to be a dancer. She danced with Merce Cunningham. Was very, very talented and very brilliant, yet couldn't cope with many of the things in life and would announce daily that she was going to kill herself.
What did you do to try to, if she announced that she was that despondent, what did you do to try to help her?
We did get her to a therapist. The therapist wanted to see her 3 times a week. And at that time, I was working a temp job just to buy groceries, because our business wasn't earning anything. We weren't even paying our mortgage, and I needed to keep my family going with groceries.
And you had other children.
Yes, groceries were more important.
And
we wanted to do whatever we could for her.
Sure.
But we couldn't find anyone who wanted to help her without getting paid $150 an hour first. And we frankly just couldn't do more than maybe getting her there once every other week.
Was she diagnosed with any mental disorder, or was it just deep depression, or was there a reason that she wanted to end her life?
Yeah, she was bipolar. I think about bipolar. First of all, someone who is bipolar, one day they may wake up and they're happy and smiling. The next day you may say good morning and they may slam the door on you.
That's true.
It's
really
unpredictable.
Opposite ends.
And she did get the medication, and she was better when she was on it. However,
yes,
it takes away the high. She got a wonderful high when she would dance and just be on top of the world. But the medication would just take and put a lid on that high.
Yes.
And therefore, she didn't want to take it.
Almost numb her out a bit?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the difficulty is it's not easy to find solutions. We looked, and other than having somebody who wanted to see her frequently,
yes,
there just were no easy solutions. She would be the one who had to decide that she needed help.
Mm-hmm.
Parents, when you have an adult child, there is no way to put them away for more than a short time.
How old was she?
She was 25.
So she had come back from the East Coast after attending college,
Yes.
and dancing, and having a dancing career.
Yes.
And did her illness bring her home to California, Southern or Northern California at that time? Is that where you were living?
Yes, we were in Northern California, and yes, she finally did come home because she just couldn't quite cope. She uh, couldn't get a job,
Wow.
and it was more self-destructive behavior. In New York City, she said she was going out to get a job and decided that would be the point to shave her head.
So
And
very
that wasn't,
irrational.
yeah, that wasn't the best time. That wasn't perhaps in at the time to
Yes.
shave your head.
So that imbalance was starting to really affect her daily decisions and her everyday life. Then, when she did come home, how long was she home before she committed suicide?
It was, gosh, about 4 months.
A very short time.
Yes.
And during that time, previously, you were going through a divorce,
Mhm.
you were going through bankruptcy, and then this. I don't. How did you cope? How did you begin to even deal with this?
The only thing I could do was sometimes just stop by the side of the road, go to a park. I would sometimes just sit in the grass and just be aware of the surroundings, just smell the grass, look at the flowers, look at the shape of the leaves. Just get to a place where I could say, right here for this moment, everything's okay.
Did you or do you have a strong spiritual or religious belief?
I was raised traditional Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't the traditional Catholic belief that came to me, but more of an understanding that there was a bigger picture.
Ah,
And also, at that point, I remember going into a store and finding a book about angels. And I began to have a little journal, my angel journal.
beautiful.
And my angel told me that his name, or her name actually, was Be at Peace. Almost like Beatrice, but it's
Be at
Be at
peace.
Peace. And I used to just write down my thoughts, my feelings. Often at that point, it was the questions that I had. What else can I do?
Did you ever
What do
ask
you
why
need?
was this happening to you?
I figured I may have something to learn.
Mm-hmm.
It was more after it was all over that I began to say, okay, these were things that happened. And I began to understand that I have some sort of, let's say, spiritual causality in what happens to me, and that the things that happened may be lessons of some kind. To this day, I can't tell you I have fully sorted that out to say, here's, using my head, here's the lesson.
Right.
I haven't gotten that, but I began to look more at my way of life and my way of being and say, what may I need to change? Because however I have been in the past, I had these outcomes. How can I choose better in the future? I can't erase the past. That's
Correct.
there.
Right.
But how can I move forward and make better choices? I had a friend ask me after this had happened and say, if you had known it would end this way, would you have chosen to have her? And I have to say, yes. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't have given up one moment. Watching her grow, watching her brilliance. She was a joyous, beautiful, talented child in so many ways.
Stepping out of that time and moving into afterward, what I hear you saying is that you began your life by finding a job on your own,
Mm-hmm.
I assume in your own apartment.
Yeah.
You had 2 other children. They were all grown at that juncture. Is that correct?
They were on their way.
Right.
So they were not young.
Mm-hmm.
And so I began to take charge of that. I also went back and learned more about mindset, neurolinguistics programming.
Ah.
I began coaching people at that point. And I coached individuals and business owners, and often the group I worked with they would select me as the coach for someone who had lost a child.
Isn't that? And did they know your background, or
No,
it was just
I often never told them.
talk about the universe working in mysterious
Yes.
ways?
Inevitably, they would at one day say, "You couldn't possibly understand what it's like to lose a child." At which point, I would share with them that yes, I could understand what it was like to lose a child.
How powerful. What I'd like to have you close with is, if you were to give our audience or anyone that is listening any tips about anything that they're going through that is so painful and how to get through it, what would you say?
I find the first thing, and I do this all the time, is to step back, get out of your head, and if you can meditate, meditate. If you've never meditated and you don't know how, then go sit in nature, look at the details of a leaf. Find that way within you that steps out of the problem so you can, like taking a breath of fresh air.
Mm-hmm. You see it in a different way then.
Yes. And then connect to spirit, whatever way is meaningful to you. It's not about religion. If you speak to Jesus easily, do that. If you speak to universe or Buddha or whatever, the name is not important, but connecting with that higher power, that's important.
Mm.
And that's where I found the role of intuition comes in. I am not naturally an intuitive person,
Okay.
but as I've opened to this thought that we do get messages that help us, then I found that intuition for me is more like a little thought
Oh.
that goes past, and
Like a bolt?
it doesn't repeat itself.
Oh.
It will.
So you have to catch it when it comes?
Yeah, it's just one of those you're not expecting, but it comes along and says, "Hey, say this."
Thank you so much for sharing your journey, and I love you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
You just are wonderful, and you're an inspiration, not only to me, but I hope to others. Thank you, Carole.
Oh, thank you, Liz.